Hello and welcome back to COM 231 Public Speaking. This is part 2 of our lesson for April the 7th, 2020. So what I wanted to do now is go into your persuasive speaking assignment. So the objectives of this speech is to create a speech using speech-making processes to attempt to persuade the audience to change a belief, to act, or to reinforce a belief, to use persuasive speaking elements in organization, to do scholarly research, and to create appropriate presentation aids. So you'll prepare and present an 8 to 10 minute persuasive speech about a topic of your choice that deals with a change. So banned topics include anything about smoking, drinking, premarital sex, abortion, gun control, euthanasia, the death penalty, organ or blood donation, or joining a frat or a sorority. Avoid topics that are very controversial and complex because it's just too difficult to deal with these issues in this brief time that we have in this class. So you want to include a minimum of 5 outside credible sources. All right, so this is what you learned in your annotated bibliography speech, and we touched on it a little bit in your informative speech as well. You also want to have a typed preparation outline with the bibliography, okay? And so this is key to, this is worth 10 points, okay? So make sure that you have this draw on your annotated bibliography assignment, and you can refer back to the video where I walked you through how to do it. All right, so notes. Now I can't take up your notes after the speech, obviously. All right, so one thing that I noticed from your informative speeches was that several of us looked like we were reading off the screen. Now, unless you reach a point, when you reach a point, if you choose to, where you're giving speeches with a teleprompter or with a full set of notes where you have everything written out in front of you, that's not helping you. It's not helping you as much as it could in this course. The idea is to learn, it's to challenge your mind, it's to step out of your comfort zone a little bit, and you're not doing that when you're reading off a screen. And there were several of us that it really appeared to me that you were reading off the screen. I could see your eyes moving from your left to right. Speeches were delivered in a way that was very different from the last speeches that you gave before. Words that are kind of weird when you see them written out and you try to say it out loud and you kind of trip over it a little bit. That's what happens when you're reading. If you've ever watched, the Tonight Show or any live show where they have cue cards, Saturday Night Live is a great example. You can tell that they're reading. You can tell by their eye movement. You can tell when they stumble on something that they probably typically wouldn't stumble on, except for the fact that they were trying to read it in the moment. So please don't do that. So I am going to ask that I can see note cards in your persuasive speech, or I can see a piece of paper, something. I do not want to see you reading, and I will take off points for that. I did not take points off for the informative speech for those who I suspected of doing that. But the idea is to learn here. The idea is to arrange your notes, because most of the time that's all you'll have if you are doing this in a real situation. Okay. Dress nicely for this when you record yourself. Now, the electronic presentation aid, which we're going to talk more about next week, I'm not going to require this because of the situation where this is now an online class. I'm not going to require you to do this, but you can get bonus points if you can incorporate an electronic presentation aid, so PowerPoint, something like that. You will get bonus points, very valuable bonus points, if you if you do this, okay? And we'll talk more about that next week. Okay, so you want to present your views on a subject with the intent of changing or reinforcing a belief or motivating your audience's actions. At best, you'd like the audience to adopt your beliefs on the matter, and in the very least, you want to persuade the audience to consider looking at the situation from your perspective. This assignment requires considerable research and skillful handling of the methods of persuasion. Consider an issue of current concern, an issue of significance, or an issue or problem in which you strongly believe. This speech gives you the opportunity to affect the attitudes and/or behaviors of your audience. Please no politics with this. We're in an election year. As we've talked about ad nauseum in this class, you have to understand your audience. However you're communicating, in any communication situation, there's a sender and there's a receiver. And in this case, there's going to be receivers, because you're speaking to people. And if you just take the state of North Carolina, for example, we're one of the states that's going to decide who the next president of the United States is. The professionals who do this all day long, they forecast which presidential candidate is going to win which state. They don't have any idea who's going to win this one, whether it's the incumbent president or whomever's running against him. So if you take that and then apply it to our class, it's likely our class is probably split about who they're going to vote for. So you're not going to persuade anyone to change their mind on who they're going to vote for President of the United States in the year 2020. Not in 8 to 10 minutes. You stand to lose a lot of your audience. Don't do it. Don't do it, okay? Please don't. I'm going to ask you not to do that, okay? And I'm not going to read the rest of this, but please read it on your own. You are responsible for knowing all of this and understanding what you're going to be graded on, okay? So again, this is the persuasive speaking assignment. It's in your persuasive speaking speech folder, okay? All right, so what I wanted to do is look over chapter 24 with you. See if I can pull it up here. All right, so the principles of persuasive speaking. So persuasion. Persuasion is the deliberate process of influence, of convincing others to share your beliefs. In public speaking, persuasive speaking is often done most frequently, as it offers the greatest potential for professional and personal rewards, and it gives you the ability to speak persuasively, which ensures a healthy democracy. When you attempt to influence audience choices, you serve to increase the audience's understanding and awareness. Persuasive speeches serve the same purposes as informative speeches, with the addition of influencing audience choices. And these choices may range from slight shifts in opinion to wholesale changes in behavior. Persuasive speeches limit alternatives. So I want you to think about the people running for president and people running for office and all those commercials that we saw over the past few months before this whole pandemic started, and then think about what you're about to see, right? Be thinking about that as we discuss this, because you have something to apply this to, okay? Persuasive speeches limit alternatives. They represent at least two viewpoints, and the objective of the persuasive speaker is to limit the audience's alternatives to the side the speaker represents. And this can contrast unfavorable alternative with favorable and shows the latter, which is the favorable, to be of greater value. Persuasive speeches appeal to human psychology. Audience analysis is crucial to make your speech personally relevant to your audience. You want to be able to identify what target audience cares about, and you want to do this in order to build common ground. Know your audience. Like we've talked about a bunch of times, like I just brought up again. Know your audience. There's a whole psychology around this, and we're going to talk more about that. These speeches appeal to human psychology. It increases your odds of influencing by setting modest goals, establishing your credibility, and building common bonds with your audience, making your message relevant to the audience, addressing the audience whose position is similar, demonstrating plenty of positive consequences for your position, and considering using narratives. Okay, so we're going to talk about some classical persuasive appeals. So logos refers to the persuasive appeals or proofs, persuasion brought about by a speaker. So this is having to do with reason and logic. You're making an argument. It's a stated position with support for or against an idea. Your pathos is an appeal to emotion. It helps establish a personal connection with your audience. It makes issues more relatable, and it makes arguments more compelling. You can evoke these emotions by using compelling stories, vivid imagery, and repetition and parallelism. You base your emotional appeals in sound reasoning. What actually persuades an audience is the interplay between emotion and logic. Emotion gets the attention and arouses feelings, and reason provides justification for those feelings. Emotion and reason together may prompt the audience to believe in or act upon your suggestions. Appealing to emotion based on sound reasoning also ensures your speech is ethical. Okay, your ethos are appeals based on the speaker's character. Elements of ethos include competence, which is the speaker's knowledge of subject matter, moral character, which is the speaker's straightforward and honest presentation of the message, and the speaker's goodwill toward the audience. Contemporary persuasive appeals. The modern research confirms the power of pathos, ethos, and logos. Modern research also suggests that the messages must effectively target an audience's motivations for feeling and acting as they do, needs, and the likely approach to mentally processing the persuasive message. You want to appeal to what motivates your audience members. So your motive is the predisposition to behave in a certain way. Motives arise from needs and desires that we seek to satisfy, and successful persuaders motivate listeners to help themselves. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you've ever taken a psychology class, even intro to psych, this is one of the core principles of it. This is a model of human action based on principle that people are motivated to act based on their needs. Individual needs at lower essential levels must be fulfilled before higher levels become important and motivating. And here's the famous triangle with the physiological needs on the bottom: safety, social, self-esteem, and self-actualization. So each item on the bottom and then the next one up has to be met before you get to the next one, or the next one, and the next one. If your basic physiological needs aren't met, none of these other things are relevant. The elaboration likelihood model of persuasion is referring to people process persuasive messages by one of two routes. Listeners motivated and able to think critically about a message engage in central processing, which involves considering message seriously, and these listeners are more likely to act on a message. Listeners who lack motivation or ability to pay attention to issues engage in peripheral processing, which involves being influenced by a speaker's appearance or reputation, slogans or one-liners, or obviously attempts to manipulate emotions. Ever seen a political speech? If you have, you've seen this. You just may not have known that so much thought and science and all these thought processes have gone into it. All right, so I'm about to run out of time on my video because I have a time limit on what I can upload per video. So I'm going to upload a part 3, and we're going to start right here with targeting your audience behavior. So we're still in chapter 24 of your book if you're following along. So go get a coffee or a water and stand up and stretch for a little bit, and I'll see you right back here in just a moment. Thank you.